Hello everyone! It's easy to take for granted the comforts of our everyday homes, but today you'll truly appreciate your living quarters. Check out these places that make it hard to believe that people actually live there. Let's get it on. We all adore Venice for its charm as the most romantic city on the water. However, not many are aware of its much less romantic counterpart along the Atlantic Ocean shores in Nigeria. Welcome to Makoko. Once a fishing village, now it's a bustling slum community built on water. People used to come here to make a living, and now it's home to over 200,000 residents. But because there's no proper sewage system and lots of motorboats around, the water here is super dirty, making fishing almost impossible. Plus, locals can't get good education or medical help because the government doesn't officially recognize the settlement. Sure, many charity organizations are trying to address this issue, but for now, the locals' lives feel more like surviving a disaster. Hopefully, this will change someday. How does it feel to always be short of oxygen? Ask the people in La Rinconada in Peru. This town sits over 3 miles above sea level, making it the highest inhabited place on Earth. Despite being home to about 30,000 people, the life conditions of its residents are truly distressing. But what makes people live here? Well, there are 2 big reasons: hope and gold mines. People come from all corners of the country, dreaming of making a quick fortune. However, because of the policies of local companies, only a handful manage to do so. Can you believe that around 10,000 monks, nuns, and novices live in tiny houses, practically stacked on top of each other? Up in Tibet, there's a place called Larung Gar, or the 5 Scientist Buddhist Academy. Despite sitting at 2.5 miles in the mountains, it's become a major pilgrimage spot. Residents go about their daily routines of attending classes and practicing spirituality before heading back to their homes in the evening. Just imagine, someone has to climb all the way to the very top. When it comes to truly one-of-a-kind places, you can't miss out on Yanjin, a city nestled in Tibet and known as the narrowest in the world. It's pretty astonishing. Its widest point spans just 1,300 feet, and in some spots it's barely 130 feet wide. Yanjin may be small, but it's home to around 400,000 people. How is this possible? The secret lies in its impressive length of a whopping 37 miles. On the bright side, thanks to its unique layout, there aren't many cars around, making the air quite clean. But still, it's hard to imagine how so many people manage to coexist in such a cramped space. Sometimes you're driving over a bridge without even realizing there's a whole residential area underneath it. Take, for instance, the bridge in Manila in the Philippines. It's scary to think that people actually have to live in such conditions, and raise children too. The lack of basic amenities, total lack of sanitation, and constant noise from cars, that's their daily struggle for life. The people living in this house not only ignore their own comfort, but also create inconvenience for others. Actually, this is what they call a nail house in China. When the government is building a new expressway, they sometimes can't negotiate with homeowners to move or tear down their property. So, they opt to pave the road around the house instead. This means that residents are trapped inside, enduring the constant racket of traffic and breathing in car exhausts. And they can forget about opening a window for a breath of fresh air. Meet Halley 6, the first polar station floating on an ice shelf. It's made up of 8 interconnected modules that can be moved using heavy machinery. This is crucial because the Brunt ice shelf is constantly thawing, posing a risk of flooding the station.
Ready to face it.
It's easy to guess that those who come here are constantly risking their lives. Also, Halley Station isn't the best place for those who need vitamin D. During winter, there's simply no sunlight, and polar explorers won't see it again for another 100 days. Wind blasting at 60 miles per hour and waves towering at 23 feet, residents of the Canadian town of Fort Erie often find themselves facing extreme weather conditions. While it may resemble a scene from a disaster film, people here are truly living through it, battling nature's fury every step of the way.
But the ice on the front of my house is so thick that we honestly think it'll be a month or so before we can look out the window.
Any ideas what you're looking at? It's not just some odd dwelling, it's a real state. Yes, that's right. The tiniest country in the world, called Sealand, was set up on a British offshore platform last century. Unfortunately, Sealand isn't officially recognized as a new state, but it already has 27 citizens and even issues its own currency, stamps, and passports. By the way, you can also give it a shot and apply for citizenship, just like anyone else. So, we've already seen a state with 27 people, but what about a city with 270 residents all living in just one building? Yeah, it's not just a house, it's like a whole town under one roof. with infrastructure and everything you might need. It's located in Alaska in this tiny town called Whittier. There's a tunnel that locals can take to get to the nearest town, but it only runs from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, and it switches directions every half hour. This village is for those who aren't afraid of heights. Situated in southwest China, this 2-century-old settlement sits atop cliffs towering 2,600 feet high. The only way down is a precarious 2-hour journey along rickety wooden stairs. Just think about it, around 18,000 people call this place home. They all moved here out of desperation, and while they stick together, life is tough and money is tight. Dear introverts, guess what? We've discovered your ultimate hideaway, nestled atop one of the Italian Alps. Sitting at around 1.2 miles above sea level, you'll have all the peace and stunning scenery you crave. But here's the thing. Getting here isn't exactly easy. If you need even the basics like medical aid or supplies, be prepared for a tough helicopter ride. You know that feeling when you've done something embarrassing and just want to get away from everyone as far as possible? Well, we've found the perfect spot for that. Edinburgh of the Seven Seas is located about 1,350 miles away from the nearest settlement, making it one of the most remote places on Earth. About 270 people live on the island, and reaching it takes 2 weeks of braving the rough waters of the Atlantic Ocean. You could try to make it in just 6 days, but if you miss the ferry, you'll have to wait for a whole year for the next one. Santa Cruz is a tiny island off the coast of Colombia, covering just about 0.97 acres. Despite its small size, it's home to around 1,200 people, making it 4 times denser than Manhattan. Yet, there's no proper sewage system. The military brings in fresh water, and electricity is only on for 5 hours a day. So, why are people staying here? Believe it or not, it's the absence of mosquitoes. Some fishermen came across the island after a long day of fishing and decided to rest here. They were relieved to find out that there weren't any irritating insects, which is a big problem back in Colombia. Surprisingly, that's what drove them to establish a settlement here. Have you heard about Freedom Cove? It's this awesome island close to Vancouver, put together by 2 artists. There are 12 floating platforms making up the settlement, and you can only reach it by swimming. People get their water from the closest waterfall and survive only on fresh foods that they can find in the water or nearby woods, as they don't have electricity or refrigerators, living just like Robinson Crusoe. Want to check out a home that's around 140,000 years old? Well, welcome to Iran, where you'll find the ancient village of Kandavan. People here live right on the slope of the volcano, with their homes carved into the volcanic rock. The mountain formed 140,000 years ago through natural processes, and after eruptions, pyroclastic flows shaped cliffs around it, standing over 330 feet. Right now, there are around 600 people living in the village, but surprisingly, they all seem pretty content with that. Imagine living in constant fear of being engulfed by streams of molten lava. This is the harsh reality for the people of Aogashima Island in Japan. This place is home to 4 volcanoes, which, although dormant for centuries, erupted once back in the 18th century, forcing people to evacuate for a whopping 50 years. However, life eventually found its way back to this island. The only way to reach the island is by helicopter, as it's surrounded by sheer cliffs. Living in the mountains is a lifelong dream for many, but not everyone can make it work in real life. Plus, is it really all that heavenly if you're stuck living down in the lowlands, like the people who own these houses? Clearly, they'll need to put in some effort to reach civilization, not to mention dealing with the rain, humidity, earthquake risks, and, worst of all, rock slides. Near Verona in northern Italy, there's a villa called Sunflower. It's the first ever rotating house, constructed way back in 1935. This house revolves on a large platform, following the sun's movement throughout the day. And yeah, while the homeowners of the house don't suffer from a lack of vitamin D and dreadful living conditions, it's safe to say their life is anything but ordinary. The owner of this house gets a brand new view from the window literally every few minutes. Designed by the architect, this 1,600 square foot wonder uses minimal energy, which is great for the environment. It sits atop a resort town in Italy called Rimini, but it's far from the hustle and bustle, nestled almost in the middle of the wilderness. This isn't just any floating house, it's a home on the tiniest inhabited island on Earth. Look, there's barely enough room for a tree and a house. And as for a backyard, well, that's out of the question. And the owner must always be on edge, knowing that a surge could one day irreparably damage the island, and therefore their home. This is Shibam, a really unusual and beautiful city in Yemen. Its tall buildings made of raw brick give it a stunning look, earning it the nickname the Chicago of the desert. It may not look huge, but 7,000 people call it home. Plus, it gets pretty hot here. Even in the coldest month, temperatures don't drop below 65.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And back in 2008, a tropical cyclone swept through Shibam. Remember the movie Howl's Moving Castle? Well, thanks to architects from Copenhagen, it's got a bit closer to reality. Though there's no magic inside, it's actually quite simple. Living with the sensation of always being on the move isn't everyone's cup of tea. The house's shape is like a hexagonal prism, striding on big metal legs. I wonder if there should be a special driver's license category for operating such a thing. Remember a time when you've had a few drinks at a bar, then returned home and struggled to fall asleep. You'll get a rough idea of what the residents in these houses might feel like. You can't wander around the room with a hot cup of coffee in the morning, but you'll always feel like a sailor in these buildings in Vancouver. Nestled in Lake Victoria, Africa's largest lake, between Kenya and Uganda, lies the tiny Migingo Island. Though it doesn't look like much, this island boasts a plethora of bird species and is famous for its rich fish stocks. This is why it's become a hotspot for territorial conflicts, given the pivotal role of fish in the region's economy. Looks creepy, doesn't it? In 2022, the once lush and lovely Shanxi province in China faced a drought. Dozens of tributaries of the largest river in Eurasia dried up. The locals had to deal with a shortage of drinking water and electricity, disruptions in cargo delivery, endless wildfires, and unbearable heat. It's hard to imagine what the people there went through. Ostrog is an active monastery in Montenegro. What makes it unique is its location. It's nestled 3,000 feet high right in the cliffs. Getting here by transport, especially public, is really tough. Even hiking is quite challenging. Some trails are narrow and rocky. As of today, only 12 monks live in Ostrog, and there's no doubt that they lead an austere lifestyle. Slab City is certainly not for those who are used to city living. People living in this settlement in the California desert call it the last free place on Earth, where there are supposedly no rules or laws. It's considered a perfect spot for ex-convicts, wanderers, and overly passionate hippies. Of course, in the desert they have no proper sewage systems, electricity, and other conveniences we're accustomed to.
Okay.
Would you dare to spend a vacation here? A homeless person in California decided it was time for a change and got creative, building a genuine cottage from whatever materials were at hand. It turned into a mini version of a luxurious hillside villa, though not quite as upscale. According to the owner, he's been living here for decades and has no intention of trading this place for a regular apartment. After seeing this video, you probably won't complain about your small apartment anymore. This guy converted a milk tanker into a fully fledged living space on his own. Though he won't be able to boast about a roomy living room, it looks like he's perfectly fine with it. Could you see yourself living in such a tiny space for years? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.